Hello? Hello? Hey, Doug. Sorry to interrupt. This is Jim Ippolito. I can't hear your voice. I can't hear the discussion.
Yeah, I can't hear either. Jim.
Okay, thanks,
Can you
Joe.
hear me?
I can hear you, Joe. Yeah.
I can't hear anything either. Hang on.
All right, can you hear us now?
Oh
Yes.
yeah,
All
perfect.
right, well, that's good. Good. Thanks for weighing in. That's a lot more fun. Yeah, this is going to be a lot more exciting with sound for you. All right, so we'll do a little bit of this background. It'll probably take us 20 or 30 minutes to give all that background, show you where we're at. But I'd like to use the hour between 10 and 11, which there's a few people who can't join us till 10, but to really brainstorm as a group what you see in what we're talking about as a value, what you might want to steer us towards, what you want to do yourself, how involved you want to be. And so the bulk of the time, I hope, is on that kind of brainstorming, and then we'll talk about next steps. Now that I've gotten off of that. All right, so a little bit of background. I am Doug Jackson Smith. I'm the Kellogg Chair and Director of the Agroecosystem Management Program. I took that role on officially in January, but the Agroecosystem Management Program has a long history at Ohio State. It's been around since the late 90s. It was founded with a big Kellogg Foundation endowment that does not pay any of my salary. It just gives us some reasonably modest operating funds to be able to implement some programs. As I understand its history, I was not here when it was created, but it was really built to be an interdisciplinary platform for research, I think, first and foremost, but also education programs and engagement outreach kind of work in agroecosystem space. Now, you're all probably wondering what we mean by agroecosystems. I do every day. I'll give you my take on that in a minute, but I do think the idea was to try to use the agroecosystem idea as a place where that kind of interdisciplinary applied and engaged work is the right approach, right? So if you're going to be studying whole systems, there's certain ways you do that. I was hired by the Discovery team, so I wasn't here when it was created, but I heard that a lot of people associated with AMP helped push the idea forward that became the In Fact Discovery theme, the Initiative for Food and Ag Transformation. And they've also been an engine for developing a sustainable ag major for our college, which just got launched a couple of years ago that many of you are involved with. We give research grants. We've got a separate endowment to support some on-farm research. So if any of you work with farmers and want to do on-farm research, that deadline will roll around after the holidays. We run an annual summit that gathers people working in this space from across the state, predominantly from outside the university, but including a lot of university partners. That's happening next week. Should have heard about that. And I see us as being a weaver, a kind of a networker of people just trying to elevate and support the work that I see going on that connects to agroecosystem. We just went through visioning and mission statement, so I feel compelled to share it with our advisory board. But basically, the mission of the organization is to try to improve the quality of life for all people through developing, viable agroecosystems. And we do that in three ways. We are a networker. We're trying to, not reinvent the wheel or do everything ourselves. We don't have the resources or staff or capacity, but deepening connections and connecting people working on agroecosystem research, teaching, programs. We're focused very much, and I'm very focused on enhancing an understanding of agroecosystems. They're intrinsically complicated and nuanced, and they're systems. And so research is a primary function that I think we play at the university in trying to shepherd work that goes down that road. And I think we're interested in expanding the use of agroecological approaches to farming as a way of getting to that vision. That one of the paths towards a world where we have more biodiverse, sustainable, resilient, equitable farming and food systems is through an agroecological kind of pathway, and that's what we're all about. What is an agroecosystem? Well, it's a vast literature and not everybody agrees, but most people will sort of point at the properties of an agricultural ecosystem. And we've had agriculture for millennia, and it's driven by and benefits from ecological processes. A lot of agroecosystem shorthand in the current day are trying to maximize the use of natural ecological processes, soil biology, nutrient dynamics, in the system, looking at ways in which ecosystems function in agricultural contexts and how to bring power of natural pest control or managing for holistic quality. A lot of that is closing loops, so keeping nutrients and recycling nutrients on a farm is a kind of agroecological way of thinking about the puzzle. Reducing the reliance on external inputs, trying to minimize waste, promoting diversity is often seen as a quintessential quality in a healthy ecosystem, and the same would be true in an agroecosystem. So having robust biodiversity, but also perhaps enterprise diversity on a farm, or diversity across the landscape and the types of people involved in farming. And then maximizing synergies. Synergies to me are the positive interactions. If we go do this, we're actually benefiting the system in multiple ways, as opposed to a kind of a narrow approach to solving simple problems in agriculture, which we've spent a lot of our time on. And I think it's empowering to people. So I am a sociologist. I just had to explain to my parents and their friends what I do in agriculture. And the shorthand is everything in agriculture, and to me, involves humans. Otherwise, it wouldn't be agriculture. It'd be a natural ecosystem. So there's no way to think about this puzzle without the managers, without the humans that do the work in agriculture, without being in communities that offer and enable and help you do the work you do, or prevent you from doing the things you want to do. So I think a good, healthy agroecosystem has that social quality as well. The people doing it are empowered to do it well, and they get something good from it. I like to think about 4 kinds of outcomes that a healthy agroecosystem produces. I remind my students that if all you're doing doesn't produce it, you're not doing agriculture, and that would be food or fuel and fiber. But the idea that an agroecosystem, unlike other systems, is there because it's for production. It's for producing things that we value in society, and that's why we're devoting our time and land and space to that. So that's a first and foremost outcome we keep our eyes on. Healthy agroecosystems need to do that, but they also do it in a way that generates environmental quality, economic viability, and social well-being. All right, that's my take on what healthy agroecosystems is. With all the powers granted unto me as the director of the Agroecosystem Management Program, I'll do what I can to push the envelope on these things. Thinking about agroecosystems. Why do I give you this extended background? Well, I brought you here to talk about what can we do here on our campus that might be a long-term approach to studying and promoting and learning about agroecosystem management. And that will require kind of a more holistic, it's the version of agricultural approaches that try to tackle some of these more holistic systems that leverage, agroecological processes when we can. There's a little bit of history here. In 2003, a family donated a farm to Ohio State University for the purposes of starting an agroecological research farm, the Mellinger Farm, about 8 miles west of campus. There was a group of faculty all before my time who got together and developed a management plan and a vision for what Mellinger Farm was going to do. They got some research funding and developed some small plot oilseed research, or small scale diversified agricultural systems research. But a lot of the property was just being managed by a tenant farmer. And in 2018, roughly, Mike, I don't know, the lease went to a guy who was converting it from more conventional corn soy rotations to a longer term rotation with a lot of perennial hay in rotation, and certifying it as organic ground. A couple of years ago, and for a long time, there have been conversations about how to maintain Mellinger Farm, and there's a real struggle with having sufficient staff support at a site that's 8 miles in the wrong direction from anything else. And so while AMP did maintain some internal staff that helped run that operation, the decision was made in 2022 by the college to refocus their energies on the core campus. So from my standpoint, stepping into the AMP program, we have an asset out there that we used to work with, but it's been repurposed, and I believe I don't think it's officially sold yet, but there's a plan of it will be sold soon. We've shifted operations and planning away from thinking about that. We were invited, and I use this term very cautiously, to look at Grace Drake Agricultural Lab as a place to be able to do this kind of work We already have the infrastructure, we already have diverse activities, we already have staff support. And it's readily accessible for, teaching for ATI students and other kinds of purposes. And I say it cautiously because I don't think anyone is giving me or AMP the right to make any decisions about Gray Street. I'm highly aware that there are a lot of people already there and already doing things, have done things for a long time. But I do think the idea of exploring what we can do with that space, I've been encouraged over the last 6 months in my conversations with a lot of you that do work there at the alignment of interest, that there's some excitement and possibilities of things we can do with some of that landscape that would be along this line. All right, questions at that point about the history? Just want to lay that out there. That's where I'm coming from. Now, there may be 1 or 2 people in the room who've not been out to Grace Drake, so I'm going to show you a map. Where is Grace Drake? There's a couple people online down in Columbus who may not have spent much time up here. Grace Drake is this thing won't point. This is the main Wooster campus. We're right here. We're right here, I guess, somewhere in there. We have a fair amount of research property in which we do a lot of experimental trials and conventional small plot agricultural research on a series of farms. But this block of land around Apple Creek is collectively referred to, as I've been told, as the Grace Drake Agricultural Lab. It includes a couple of farms as well that are more focused small plot research, but it's largely been managed as a farm. So the different people managing different parts of it, but at field scale, as opposed to used as small plot, controlled experimental design land. And it was, I think, historically managed by ATI. Is that right, Ryan? I mean, it was the ATI's teaching lab, the place. It's called a lab because it's a place and there's buildings out there that support classes and instruction and training in how to do a whole lot of things, including running, doing different kinds of agriculture, but also doing research. And I think that's a real strength. When seen from space, it's predominantly agricultural, but it's a very diverse landscape. And that's why, as I've gotten to know Grace Drake, it's a really exciting and interesting platform potentially to look at agroecosystems. Agroecosystems, I should have said earlier, are kind of a landscape phenomenon. They're not a field. You don't have one field be essentially an agroecosystem. It's a whole farm or a whole landscape. And you think about those ecological processes. If you're interested in birds and butterflies and biodiversity, you got to look at the connections across all the neighboring kind of land uses. This is how we think. I think there's 1 or 2 things we're going to correct on here. The land is currently, and for really recent history, been used. And I'm binning it in 3 categories. There's crop fields where we're growing annual crops predominantly. In rotation, which are the brown fields, we've got dark green, which is forests and woods. I am in the building with forestry on the outside of the building because my unit, the School of Environment and Natural Resources, was founded by the Department of Forestry, and it was all based up here. And so there's a whole lot of history in terms of forest research, and there's a lot of legacy plots out there that no one knows everything about. We know pieces of the stories. There's a lot of forest land still out in the Grace Drake footprint, and then a lot of livestock, and particularly pasture and hay production. And so when I think of the kinds of places I want to do research, I work a lot on crop livestock integrated systems. What I'm excited about here is the possibilities of doing some things that unite or look at different approaches to just crop production, livestock production, integrated crop and livestock, and the ability to bring forestry and forests as part of the landscape into the story. I've got a grant on agroforestry, and so there's things you can do that bring it even more seriously together. All right, we wrote a grant last spring to the Ohio State Energy Partners, OSEP. We have a sustainability grant. They give out $800,000 a year. You should all ask for some of it because it's not that hard to get, and they're trying to promote on-campus sustainability. And a lot of it, build bike racks outside of buildings or promoting solar panels and experimental ways. Most of the money is flowing to the main campus, but it's available for all the regional campuses and the Wooster. And we said, look, we want to look at whether we could enhance ecological sustainability or ecosystem services through agroecosystem management at the Wooster campus, and they gave us $50,000. We gave them 4 objectives. The first 2 were getting our ducks in a row, learning about what we have. So Kevin's going to take over in a minute, but we've assembled and integrated a lot of existing data that's just been on different people's computers or pieces of paper or in historical memory, trying to create what we call a geodatabase that allows us to see the bigger picture and have a platform on which we can kind of archive and integrate data that's been collected, particularly on the Grace Drake Ag Lab footprint. We got some money to collect new data. $15,000 is what we put in our budget. We've spent 0 of it. One of the things I want to come out with today and over the next couple of months is how can we spend that money, and who wants to help collect data, fill data gaps, collect baseline conditioned information that we can then maintain over some period of time and look at change if we go down the road of developing kind of a research design out there. And integrating these data, the dashboard Kevin's going to show you into classes would be a great opportunity too. So we'd love to see this begin to get used, certainly up here in Worcester, but down in Columbus as well. And we want to facilitate a collaborative planning process leading to a management plan. So we've got money to bring in speakers. We've got money to have citizen science data collection if we want to get the College of Wooster or the Wooster High School involved in doing a big campaign to go if we get some things that are labor intensive, we can support some of those costs. And this is the first of what I hope to be a series of planning workshops in a core planning group. So we got resources to do some interesting things, and the time scale for this is really over the next 9 months. I want to give the controls to Kevin, who's our GIS applications developer at AMP, who spent a lot of his last few months, really last year, trying to pull together data. And on the screen is the website that is the dashboard. Anyone with an OSU login can go to this dashboard and play with it. Can they change it and ruin it?
They cannot change. You can't ruin anything. No.
So you can't ruin it. So play to your heart's content. In the background, we've got all sorts of other ArcGIS applications that we can ruin that Kevin controls, but we're very interested in this as sort of the kickoff for people to see what's there. And then we can have conversations about what value we can add or what data and so forth that all of you have that we could bring into the, sorry, we stand on. All right, Kevin. All right. But I want to get out of that.
And I'm going to start off. Actually, I'm going to use this here. So if you want to follow along, you can just go to the website. And I just wanted to bring this up. I've had some people in the past say, "Well, how do I get to this map?" And so click on the link, click here on the Ohio State University, and you get to the usual OSU sign-in process. And this will take you to the ArcGIS homepage, and then let you follow on from there. The link will take you onto the dashboard. So I just wanted to show that real quick here. So this is the dashboard, as Doug mentioned. I'll refresh it here so you can kind of get it from this is what you'll see when you first come to it. This dashboard, like Doug mentioned, was a way to visualize all the data that we kind of were able to collect in-house. And sources for a lot of it came from Mike Sword and his group. They were generous enough to let me play around with their data. I don't think I destroyed anything there. So so far we've not destroyed any data in the process of doing this, and we hope to keep it that way. Farm Server is a program that the farm operations folks have been using, and before that they had a bunch of Excel spreadsheets. So we were able to take that and put it into a database format, and also pull out the boundaries that they had, and also use some aerial imagery to create field boundaries and start putting this data together. So as Doug mentioned, also this is kind of our landing page to kind of show you just the different land uses that are out there at Grace Drake, and then you can start drilling down through the data. Whoa. that was a mistake. All right, give me just a moment. Let's just do. Second here. That bad.
We have enhanced ad privacy.
Yeah.
Red flag.
Yeah. Yeah. Sign in. So now you see the whole process.
So ArcGIS is, they're pushing everybody to online on campus. You can actually still get permission to run it locally, which is how I learned it.
Yeah.
But if you haven't, if you know ArcGIS, you can play with this. If you need guidance, Kevin's more than happy to sit and work with you to figure out how to interact.
Right.
Actually, while we're speaking here, there's actually a university training session going on. It's very basic on
Oh, good.
GIS, so
Yeah,
it started an hour ago.
Yeah, and so this is so for ArcGIS online and for all Esri products in general, Esri being the company that created ArcGIS, the university has a license agreement with them. So basically all of their tools are available. The dashboard in here is kind of a good starting place for bringing your data together, kind of doing basic analysis of it. So like I said, this kind of shows you the land uses, and you can start to control different layers that are in here and start taking a look at things. So I'm going to turn off the land use there, and you can start to visualize the different crops that are grown out at Grace Drake. The legend is over here, and you can kind of see that our basic premise here is that yellow is corn, brown is soybeans, blue is small grains, green is pasture land. And then there are a few other things that are over here in different colors. If you click on one of the fields, you'll start to see some information about that particular field. So we have a field crop history over here on the right that will show you the history of what was grown on that particular field. This purple one has other crops in it. Basically, as forages, I believe, is what the source data said. So that kind of went into other crops. But down here, you'll have a diversity index. So sorry, over here you have the diversity index. So you'll have a 5-year diversity index and a 15-year to kind of show the number of different crops that were grown in that field over 5 years or over 15 years. And then over here, we have the history broken down for that field. The percentage of time that was in corn or soybeans, the percentage of time that was in small grains, and the percent of time that was in perennials. And you will get some weird things here like this. Obviously, this doesn't add up to 100%. There was probably a year in here that it was fallow. You'll also get some, come up here to this one, you'll get a few cases, actually not that one, this one, I think, where you'll get more than 100% because the field was intercrop between wheat and soybeans, for example. So you will get a few things like that. So, but that just kind of shows you the where we started with the crop history. We also have a little slider over here. So if you want to visually go through the different years, you'll start seeing the visually the difference crops that were in the different fields. So that's there too. Also, you'll start to see some different field boundaries start to show up where things have changed. So this particular field that I was just pointing at went away. That became part of the fire training center up there. So there's no longer a field there. It's interesting. The beef facility starts making a little enclave when it was built there. So you can kind of, if you know where to look, you can see the little differences in the fields. That's also reflected down here on the left. We have the number of acres that are farmed each year, and then this one, and this will be an example here. You can pop these out to see it a little bit better. Breaks down the percentages for the different crops that were grown in each year as you go use that little slider. So once we had the right here, once we had the crop data, we started looking at some other things. One of the first things was the diversity index, and we wanted to make a visual will cooperate. Make a visual representation of that. So this is the 5-year crop diversity index that we put together, and you can kind of see one being low diversity and green being and blue being the highest diversity.
One of the interesting things here is, well, the pastures have been in pasture for 15 years. So they show up as low diversity, but if you know the pastures, some of those might actually be fairly biodiverse.
Yeah.
So what's growing there, but in terms of crop rotation diversity, it's not. It's a high perenniality, low crop.
Does this have this year in it? 2023?
This has 2022 data is as far as I've gotten through it. So and then another representation. So down here, we were looking at this earlier this morning. This mouse is really, yeah. So you can see down here, this is the one of the fields right across the road from the land lab. It's the field that Brian and John have been working in a lot with their. I actually think it's the battery's dying. Yeah, the battery's gone.
What do you need, Tim?
2 double A's.
Might have some upstairs. I'll check. 2 double A's. Or did Brian go get somebody?
Just doing one of the other houses.
Let's see what I can find.
Try to make it myself. I just echoed.
Mouse function now. Guys. You're about running out your left.
I am not. Right next to this computer. Oh, can I have the keyboard?
Brian's going upstairs. He's gonna get a mouse pad and some new batteries.
All right. Just switch the mouse. Oh. Plugging down below, I think. Oh, actually, you know what? That live in quick read. My mouse, that's rolling out. Tired. Yeah. I'm tired. Weird. It's funny though. One thing Kevin skipped past is we've also got fences and water lines. So from it's like you think of the world through both crops and livestock. And to do things, if you're going to bring crops and livestock together, usually you need fences and water lines. And so we've got a sense of where that infrastructure is right now. Already know it, but many people.
We've also got tile lines and birdhouses.
Right.
I think is pretty exciting just to see all those different things.
Let me sit here in the corner. Sit closer so you're not so far away.
Yeah.
Let me grab the tab.
Quick question on the crop layer is that so the experiments that were being conducted is like from different departments.
So most of this land's not been experimental use. So the whole field's been in production. It might be that some management practices were tried that vary across fields. So we're trying to get management like fertilizer versus manure use. Almost all the tillage is pretty consistent. through time, at least the slide was trying to further back as we can hear our keys. But none of these, most of these fields have not been subdivided into, say, randomized complete block design or anything.
Or not that, so.
Other than the West Badger part.
Right, so we've got the West Badger part, which has kind of been used for organic research, historically weed research and so soil fertility research, but closer to Apple Creek, it's primarily been managed for production, so commercial production to generate revenue for the university, but also for teaching purposes of ATI students at commercial scale. So when you go out there, the fields are mostly managed, in a fashion that would be very similar to conventional commercial production rather than small plot research.
And I think that's gonna likely continue regardless. I'm not gonna prejudge where we land, but the opportunity for observational studies of comparisons of systems where you're monitoring things is kind of where the strength with the overlay with very straight, because we have a lot of other farms that we're gonna do small plot controlled experiments. This would be more of a, if we could design management contrasts that we can stick with for a long period of time, one can begin to look at the landscape scale of the farm scale, but implications of managing down in different lanes. That's where I saw Mellinger go eventually. Its strength was not the small plot stuff that was happening there. It was 300 acres of forest and cropland that could contrast, say, conventional system with some, somewhat different or deeply different management regime.
Might be a little biased here with soils. So do we have any layer which can help differentiate this landscape with like marginal lands, highly fertile lands and such and?
We have all the soils data on here from Surgo.
Yeah, but,
So you know what it's classified as. What we're looking for, just to get ahead of ourselves a little bit, is the grounded measurements that have been taken out there over the years, so that there's a difference between what the soil map might predict and what you actually find when you get there. And some of these properties have been fairly intensively sampled, like Ryan takes his soils class to learn how to sample soils out there, and so they've been sampling soils. We have, it's irregular in terms of how dense the soil sampling has been, but there's a Jim, I believe, was online and he's talked with us about maybe doing a big campaign to take systematic soil samples across the landscape and develop at least a sense of what the qualities of the soils are. There, most of the soils are similar soil series, or the same types of texture, though there are nuance variations, and there's a few places that are quite different. And I think Kevin's got the map up now, but you can see that.
You see the soil types. I do have some data for the past soil health, potassium, phosphorus, all that sort of stuff. It's not currently in the dashboard. I have it in a different map. I need to integrate it into this part yet. So, but that is there. And when you click on the fields, you do get a listing of the different types of soils that are in each field. So you don't always have to have this particular layer visible. You can see it at other times too. One other thing I will mention, we've made efforts to try and get amendments that have been added to the soils reported as well. So we have fertilizer and manure applications, if we have records of those that we've added into here. One thing that we'd like to do more with is grazing patterns, the animal grazing on the pastures. I've had some conversations with the animal folks on that. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the data a little bit and how to properly map it. So there's some room there for if anybody's got ideas on that or wants to help with that, that would be something that we're looking to add in the future. We also have for the, go down here, for the forestry folks, we've got some of the plots, the plantations that were put out in the 1950s and kind of studied through the 60s and into the 70s, but haven't been really used very much since then, mapped out. So we've got 2 of them over here, and then there's several of them down here, kind of showing the different areas that are there for the sweet maples. Some of the other areas we're still working on, trying to take old 1950s hand-drawn maps and try and convert them into digital form is not easy. For the ones that I went out with Joe Peacock, who I think is online, and we GPS a lot of the trees out here with the GPS unit, and that seems to work pretty well. But we'll be looking at some other ways to try and map those out in the future as well, and hopefully support some further research into those areas. So just other kind of layers that are in here as far as trying to make life easier. There's an infrastructure one. So if you're not real familiar with the area and you want to zoom in, you can start seeing the different buildings that are out there, the names of them. They're all included in here. We also have a couple of different versions of the natural hydrography data set. It takes a minute or 2 for it to load. I'm going to zoom out here a little bit. It'll take a couple moments for it to load, but once it does, you'll be able to see all the little streams and tributaries into the Apple Creek. Doug and I both like to mention that we always thought that Apple Creek flowed into the town of Apple Creek. It actually flows out of the town of Apple Creek. So some different things like that, at least through the area that we're most familiar with over here. So you can kind of see the different areas, drainage areas, and the water flows across the farm there. And then lastly, we have down here at the bottom, we have a bunch of aerial imagery. So I've managed to get some imagery from 2023 already. That was a contract that the GIS folks down in Columbus have and were generous enough to share with us. So you can start getting in here and seeing changes over time using the aerial imagery and turning on and off the different layers there. Unfortunately, there's not a way to use this slider over here to turn on and off imagery. I was hoping to have something like that, but it's just not possible with the technology at the moment. So that'll be a future enhancement, hopefully, to come, where we'll be able to just basically time machine back through the history of the farm by looking at the imagery that way. So
should probably move on, but quick questions for Kevin about, that's a great question about the soils. What we do and don't have.
I do want to show the birdhouses real quick.
Oh yeah, show the bird.
So Stu Courtney, who is no longer at the university, had made a number of birdhouses, and I'm gonna have to refresh this to see if this comes back. Yeah. So he had made a bunch of birdhouses, and we wanted to be able to see where those were at. So I created this app in another ArcGIS system called Survey 123, and it's something that can be put onto either a tablet or phone. Cool. Work with me here. And okay, there you go. So that's the phone preview. We can basically make these based on an Excel spreadsheet. So if you have an Excel spreadsheet that has different columns of data that you want to collect, we can very quickly take that and turn it into a survey that can go onto a researcher or student's phone, and then they can take that out into the field and start collecting information. We did this with the birdhouses. Let's see if I can get this to reload here too. The geo accuracy is only going to be as good as what the phone has. So these are the locations that Stuart was able to collect. If you zoom into them, you can see that most of them were on fence lines. Most of them are fence posts. And if you click on it, he was able to take a picture of them as well and show the birdhouse. And he also, at the time, he didn't have any identification, so he took some old ear tags from hogs and screwed them to the posts so that we would have an identification for each of them, which I thought was a great way of using old technology and new technology together, just to kind of have that, put there together like that. So if there's anything else, along that line of thinking that you would like to collect, we've mentioned to Mike possibly doing some asset management, even if we could even go out and track individual fence posts, you know, so that if there's posts that need to be replaced, if there's fence boards that need to be replaced, whatever, if there's damage to buildings that you see, you could come up with an app that you could really quickly collect information like that, broken tile lines and anything like that. All that's pretty
Hardest
easy
thing
to
is
do.
groundhogs. We don't really,
Groundhogs.
yeah.
Yeah. A little more mobile maybe than
Well, GPS trackers.
you get GPS trackers on them. Yeah. So things like that are also an option as well. Esri is to mapping basically what Microsoft is to Office products. So they have a wide variety of different products, more than you can probably ever use in your lifetime, even if you're a dedicated GIS person. So everything from tracking individual rooms within a building to macro continental level data sets. So sky's kind of the limit. If it's got a place, we can map it.
I'll just pivot from that to say it should not escape most of your attention that we just got a really big grant from and a whole bunch of equipment from Trimble. And Trimble is a geospatial company that collects and delivers sensors and data sets. And so we're really interested in what we might bring in to deploy some of that equipment for field campaigns if we're trying to collect point data or other kinds of data that we have tools now available that are going to allow us to participate and do things, and probably even some back end things in terms of the visualization capabilities of what Trimble does, being ways we can play with alternative futures or alternative ways things could look without having to actually change them up front. So,
And just so folks know a little bit about what may already be taking place. So I take my students out and do grid sampling, exercises in labs, for my soil fertility course. So we have some fields where we've been able to collect that gridded data. We've got other efforts. 3-4 years ago, I had students go out and soil sample all the pasture fields that we've got over there, and those data have been shared and will be eventually linked. So there's opportunities to continue to build out the data set. Ideally, we need to be able to identify areas that haven't been systematically sampled, and we can add that to the data set. But the other thing that I think is really important is not only putting it in a framework that the researchers can engage with, but also use it as an opportunity to organize the data so that it can also be more helpful to the field operations. The types of data that they need that can be used to develop variable rate application management practices on the farm is really important. So working with the farm crew and Kevin, getting them together to see if we can get all those different technology platforms to work is gonna, it's already been an area of interest and challenges to overcome, but that's kind of where we'd like to go.
One thing that's good is that Kevin, the weirder the challenge, the more interested you get.
He's got a particular interest in making different software formats and technologies play well together. So
Sure. This I was going to throw in as just an example. This is a scan of an old paper map, I assume originally that Stuart gave me. You will see on the left hand side, most of the lettering there is pretty normal. I mean, it's just your normal text. If you go towards the right hand side a little bit, you'll start to see it gets really wavy. That's because I had to rubber sheet the map, try and make it line up with reality. So it was just kind of an example of this is where we were and this is where we're kind of trying to go to. And you can kind of see the torsions you have to go to sometimes with old data to try and make it line up with where things actually are a little bit. So I use the mouse just to say, so just as an example, E5-2 where there's 31 down here, the whole thing had to go like that in order to get things to line up. So there's a lot of information that's like this. The forest plots are similar. You know, they did the best they could with what they had. One of the forest plots was like it's 35 feet from the last post of the guardrail on the bridge of the road on a compass direction of whatever degrees. So okay, that's great, but the bridge has been replaced twice since then. And there's no reference to go off of for stuff like that. So that's just the sort of challenges that we've kind of gone through, trying to make data show up in the right spots.
All right, if nothing else, we've got a really good unified map of all the field boundaries that unites all the different numbering systems that have evolved through the different units. People often have different names for the same thing, so at least in the big map. So here's circle back to the task at hand. My draft goals when I think about this place is I would love to see the facility be able to be used for farming systems research. Back to my comment earlier, looking at the whole field management or whole farm landscape patterns, not so much small plot experimental research. That's not a bad thing. We've got places for it. There may be parts of the landscape, especially West Badger, where we can do that. But I think that's a niche that is a very exciting area to work, and it's a good place to study agroecosystems. It's kind of how you have to in situ. I also see the great value in using this landscape as it has been used for teaching and training, and especially as we go down this road of looking at regenerative or agroecological management systems and innovative ways to think about how things work. It could be a platform or even a greater resource for ATI courses, grad student projects. I'd love to get the sustainable ag majors who have to do 2 hands-on practical training experiences, maybe down the road, to have one of those occur up here and bring them in as a place where you can do some things you can't do down at water. And if we, I do a lot of extension outreach engagement work, and I do think this place is a great platform or location that we can continue to bring in the outside world, farmers, stakeholders, community members. And it's a place. That said, it's not a blank slate. I'm aware of the fact that there's a lot of people there doing all these things and have done it for a long time. So it's a question of how to partner and find that sweet spot where we can kind of move forward together. And it needs to be practical. We're not going to have until I am successful landing the $100 donation, infinite resources. And so I would love to get us to the point with our little $50,000 seed grant to where we're able to get a good management plan that's practical, that doesn't make my sword pull out his hair because it can't be done. It's not too complex. But it has guidelines that we've kind of agreed to as to how we want to manage it, how we want to instrument, measure what's happening out there, to be able to make more of what that resource is for these kinds of goals. And then I think with a greater platform, we have greater chances of getting really good resources. I mean, I apply for a lot of really big grants, and sometimes you get it. Usually you don't, but like this could be a real gem in terms of a magnet for doing so for the well-resourced integrated research, teaching, and engagement. I think about this as a mental image, and I just want to put it out there as a mental image that lets you understand me, not because this is what we're going to do. But I've always, whenever I'm out there with somebody else, say I can envision dividing up some zones across some, not all of Grace Drake, where we maintain conventional management, whatever that means to you, usually separate row crop production, grazing lands, and forest management. And we manage them whatever the mainstream dominant way is of the day. That could evolve through time. It could be that we have a lane where we get into some pretty more aggressive, what I'll call improved management within the conventional system. And to me, that's tillage and cover crops, controlled drainage, maybe different ways of grazing. if we're not doing I think we are doing intensive grazing, we've already made that transition, but you know, those are readily accessible and relevant without as much change for a lot of Ohio farmers. But I'm also quite interested in a kind of a deeper example of a contrast, or maybe a more agroecological regenerative land where we do a whole lot of things, or we do some things much more intensively. And to me, in my work right now, simply going back to long rotations is a kind of radical step for a lot of conventional grain production. You know, what do we want to take part of that land and put it back into that kind of cycle? We want to have livestock out in crop fields, grazing cover crops or grazing field residues. Do we want to look at anything in the agroforestry bin? And those are just 3 examples. So that's what's in my head is like, I can go out and start mapping out, okay, this could be zone A, zone B, zone C. Managers then would manage those zones differently, but still at the field scale, there'd just be some, you know, kind of things we do. And then we can, over time, the effects of that management usually takes years. We can track what that means, what those different systems could look like. We could look at a lot of kinds of outcomes. We didn't have yield yet on those maps in the geodatabase. I was going to point that out and say that's one we want to put in. Insofar as we can document that historically or going forward. We've got a lot of potential to get good soils data. There's been great conversations with Steve and John here about water quality and mapping the hydrography of that landscape so that we can link management to water quality, surface and subsurface outcomes. There's a huge world of carbon and greenhouse gas emissions and carbon sequestration that we would be able to really go all in and try to track what management can do here in this landscape for advancing goals for carbon management. Biodiversity is a huge thing. I've got colleagues who focus quite a lot on biodiversity. I think understanding agroecosystem management usually means you're interested in trying to leverage biodiversity to gain control over your pests and weeds and boost qualities on the landscape that you might not see in a more conventional system. And documenting what those outcomes are is pivotal to justifying their existence. And we can monetize it in some way. Looking at economics, I'll be honest, is hard to do on an experiment station because it's not usually real labor and real spending. And if you have to go through work day right away, you know, it's not like a farm. And you have to hire people at Ohio State. It's not like hiring people in the real world. But I do think an eye towards what the economic implications are. You always want to have that in the equation because it's not going to go very far unless we can look at ways to make alternative pathways, especially an agroecosystem driven pathway, a viable option for more farmers. All right, your turn. Sorry it took so long to get here, but hopefully this is good to get everybody on the same page now where you're now in my head. What I'd like to do is go around and we probably just have one cycle. And this isn't the end of the conversation, but with the time we have left, get a sense of who you are, because I don't think everybody knows everybody. I've not done introductions yet on purpose. What your current level of experience or interest is in working at Gray Strait. Some of you do a lot of stuff there, some have never been out there. And or with agroecosystem management, if you've got a activity or program there. And then I'd like to hear your thoughts about what excites you and what terrifies you. Just to kind of get it all out. And I think it'll help us collectively begin to see if there's a convergence of interests and path that might open up that we can do the things that are most exciting and avoid the things that are most scary, if you will. All right, I'm going to skip Kevin. I'll start with Meg because you probably won't go quickly.
Okay, yeah, I'm Meg Edwards. I'm in the first semester of our master's program. Meg is my advisor in SCNR, and I'm interested in beginning farmer persistence and practices that help farmers stay in farming. And I'm excited at the idea of having these sort of larger scale regenerative research areas, since often that's done on a really small scale, and it would be cool to see over time what that looks like on a larger scale. And no worries, jump out at me at the moment.
I'm Aaron Smith, and I apologize if any of you guys leave here with the sniffles after sitting here with me. I work as a lab assistant for Dr. John Witter. So we've done a lot of stuff out at Gray Strait, such as tillage lab we did a couple of weeks ago with the students in the machinery management program. We've been utilizing a lot of the Trimble technology in our labs with the students, trying to get them familiar with the precision technology they can use on equipment. And we use the field space out at Grace Drake to see what it's capable of for actual in-field uses rather than just talking about it and not giving them real world demonstrations. So I think the thing I'm most excited about is not only using this for record keeping, but as a planning tool for future class use. So if we can sit down with different professors such as Dr. Witter or Dr. Hayden and get a plan for the semester, we can use this tool with Grace Drake to look at what options we have, what fields might be best suited for what they're hoping to do in their lab sessions with the students. And you know, not only can we use this for what does the field look like, but what does parking look like? What do we need to have ready there for the students? What fences do we need to turn off if they have electric running through them? Things like that. I guess the only worry I would see with this right now is just resources. I know everyone here already has probably a lot on their plate based on what I know. So I think if we can get, you know, using this ArcGIS tool and the AMP program to a point where it makes management for everyone simpler, then I guess my worry is avoided right there. So thank you all.
My name is Kate Barron. I'm farm production manager. I'm a recent grad of ATI. For those of you that don't know, I using a lot of things that I've learned by being a student here, and learning what we do and how we do it and everything like that. I'm still learning, so I don't really have a whole lot of worries or concerns or whatever, I guess, at this time, so.
Mike Sword, Superintendent of Ag Operations here at our Wooster campus. Been part of the integration of the Grace Drake with our operations. So when I started, we were managed separately. Grace Drake was managed separately. And we were tasked with kind of integrating those operations to streamline many things. So it's an exciting another project that we bring on. We host a lot of different projects, a lot of different faculty. We do field scale research already. We've done some here with some of the faculty in this room and others in Columbus. So those things are going on Grace Drake additionally as well. So integrating all these concepts, I'm always up for anything. Biggest worry, I don't worry about anything.
That's how you survive, right?
I worry. You gotta bring it up worry. I don't.
I'm Ryan Hayden. I lead the agronomy and sustainable ag programs at ATI. So I've been working with Doug on this project from the outset, and I think it's an exciting opportunity to use Grace Drake, more holistically and more integratively, from the teaching and the research side of things. And so I see my role as helping to connect the different pieces. So from the teaching side of things, we're out there collecting soil samples, working with Kevin and the farm crew to get these soil samples in a format that's useful for them. But and also providing those opportunities for students to be part of the data collection process and learn, but also link faculty with opportunities to do work out on Grace Drake. And so as an example, Steve Lyon's done a lot of work with our smart drainage system, and putting in instrumentation there and collecting useful information. It's just an example of the type of research that could piggyback on existing management on Grace Drake. And so if you guys have ideas, I'm happy to talk with you and help point you in the right direction and link you with the right people to see if we can make this happen.
Osler Ortez, faculty member with horticulture and crop science. This is my second year, so I am still learning as well. A lot of my work has to do with corn production, agronomics. As far as involvement with the center there, we have all the way from small plots, conventional corn, to strip trials, field scale at the same facility, both conventional and organic. My position also includes alternative crops. So we have been doing, if you have seen some sunflowers in the area, that those might have been connected to one of our projects. Second year doing that work on the sunflower side of things. Most exciting thing about possible project, my position is a three-way split, research, extension, and teaching. So most of the activities I do, I am always trying to think, how can this one project facilitate outcomes in the multiple levels? And I think that so far, we have been getting quite a bit of that. And as far as concerns, I will say we have kind of a struggle on there is a question as far as maintaining or having viability on the organic plots. So that will be a concern that I have, and that hopefully goes into the books, and then there can be more planning for that. It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Cassie Brown, I work with Doug with the AMP program, and I actually have a communications background. So I think the thing I'm most excited about is how that can contribute to a little more outreach in this region. I'm very excited about maybe getting some demonstration plots going and showing farmers how some of these newer systems work, so that it kind of lowers the risk for them. And I think my biggest worry is just based on recent experience, just getting out the word about what we're doing here, and putting it a little more forward and showing people the value in it, kind of keeping people who make decisions informed about what's going on.
All right, so I'm Sarah Mesteller. I teach courses about horses out at ATI. I actually probably spend more time teaching at the equine center than I do in a classroom. So I'm out at the GDAL a lot. Mostly just learning about the AMP and all of that, what that kind of entails. I guess most exciting is just what opportunities might be available out there and how that can be integrated for management decisions, as well as teaching students new things as they come about. And then I guess biggest worry is that this wealth of data won't be used enough in our decision making.
Reed Johnson, I'm a faculty member in the Department of Entomology, and I work mostly on honeybees, but I'm also interested in other pollinators. And we've had really our best apiary is on gray strake already at East Badger Farm. We have about 20 colonies out there right now, which is where most of our honey is made. And in the past, we've worked with Mike to look at bee pollination or bee visitation for soybeans. In particular, did some waggle dance analysis out there. I guess this is really exciting. It sounds like we're going to get more flowers on the landscape, which is what I am always happy to hear about with from the bee perspective. And I guess just how do we integrate all this working together to make it better? Yeah.
We should definitely get the location of here.
Oh yeah, we're at the weird old radioactive site up. Yeah. You want some honey?
It's about
Forage over like 3 miles. That's one other reason I'm really excited about this is because the large scale of it. Honeybees forage 2 to 3 miles from their apiary, which is why I'm not concerned about the radioactive state. Because most of their nectar very far away from them.
Hello, everyone. I'm Manveer. I'm an assistant professor of soil fertility and nutrient management. Joined about 2.5 months ago, so pretty new. I have not worked at all at this location, but I have visited at least 3 times by now. I'm super excited about this gold mine that we have out here. The most exciting thing about what's happening right at the moment is centralizing everything. Super fruitful for someone like me to just get on that map and fetch whatever I need. So thank you for doing that. With regards to, so I also have research, teaching and extension appointments. So definitely I'll be exploring this area for research. I would like to get in conversation about what you guys are doing with sustainable ag majors, because I also have something in my mind to have like hands-on experience kind of course. So I think this is great that that's happening, and down the road, we'll utilize this place for outreach as well. Biggest worry, I think I'm not yet engaged so far into this. Once I get engaged, then I'll start worrying.
Hi, everyone. Fernanda Krupak. I'm a faculty member in the Horticulture Crop Science Department. My position is urban food system horticulturalist. So from my scale production, certainly, as you might imagine, in urban and urbanized environments, we are restricted by land area and how to grow our crops. But this work here, I feel, is very interesting, especially looking at the diversification component, is something that a lot of the growers that I have interacted are interested in terms of crop diversification. And also this work very aligns with some of my prior work before joining Ohio when I was in Nebraska, looking at metrics like crop diversification or even like soil disturbance. I think it's very interesting to understand some of the ecosystem services based on those different metrics, and something that I'll be really interested in understanding more as more data and information is collected as part of this work. In terms of possible projects, I am very interested in like cover cropping and how that can be incorporated in more like reduced tillage systems. Obviously, more on a vegetable edible crop production, which is also part of some of the biggest worry, and understanding if there will be room or opportunities for vegetable crops there. But yeah, happy to be part of this. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Lyon. I'm professor of hydrology and water resources in the School of Environment and Natural Resources. Out at Grace Drake, I've done some work on the smart drainage, controlled drainage system out there, looking at how if you alter the water levels in that field, changes the flow of water and nutrients coming out of that system. And then we're also involved with Van Beer and Jim Ippolito is on the phone a little bit, trying to look at the soil health across the different sites there as well, across the entire field system. And then in terms of agroecosystem management, I look at a couple of Doug's projects that are here and upcoming. So all the water stuff type thing, right? Whatever happens. What am I excited about possible projects? And I'm excited about the fact that it's close by. So I don't have to go to Western Ohio every time for everything, which is great. It's right here. That's really cool. And I'm also excited about the possibilities of doing experiential teaching and things on site here. I think it's a great resource to have, not just for ATI, but also then for the larger CFAS for folks down in Columbus, get them up there for an extended period of time. Biggest worries are the red tape associated with doing things like that, because the administrative burdens are huge to get people here on campus over, say, a summer session and have that count for teaching. Actually, the same thing. That's just me in a nutshell there. And other big worry, which is not a, so I look at response of how water comes off of things. So whatever happens on the landscape doesn't worry me too much. That's different. I can figure that out. But it would be the longevity of things and the kind of jerky sudden shifts. 2 years in, let's change direction and do this now. 4 years in, let's do that. And that's the point of this meeting. I get that. So
that was a perfect segue. I'm John Van Gray. I teach at ATI. I'm the coordinator for the ENR program over there. I'm an aquatic microbial ecologist by training. So I'm also really interested in how the water affects, microbial communities, primarily in streams, things like that. All the water flows somewhere. So I'm really interested in utilizing the space to try to do a more holistic approach to just how gene flow and microbial communities respond to land use changes. So the more data we have, the better resolution data we have, it'll inform how those communities are responding, what kind of ecosystem services they might be able to provide in response to land use changes. Interested in antimicrobial resistance genes, things like that, how salinization affects these communities. So I have a lot of ideas. And a big component of this is I really want to get students in these systems to collect data. I'd like to collect some long-term data, allow students to be able to use that so they can actually get a hands-on experience doing what they hopefully will want to do in the field long-term. My biggest worry is it's hard to do things when you teach a lot. So I really need to be kind of integrated into a larger project so that I'm not just bearing the burden myself. But I think this is great. I'm really excited to get out there and try to just incorporate more ideas into the larger research project. So.
Hey everybody, I'm Haley Campbell. I also teach at ATI in their animal sciences program. I have met some of you before. If you remember my name, I was also an extension, I should say I had a different last name. But this is my second year teaching at ATI. I teach a lot of the introductory type courses, and I do utilize all of the animal units at least once a week for my different lab sections. So what I guess I'm interested and excited for is to see, how can we manipulate some of these animal systems or maybe the pasture type systems to fall in place with some of my labs. But I guess what I'm most excited about is that we could potentially come up with a better definition of improved agriculture, regenerative type of agriculture, because a lot of these phrases are buzzwords and we don't necessarily know what they mean. So if we do go ahead and towards that 3-bucket idea, I think the regenerative ag one will have the most good come out of it, so we can find it for the rest of the community. No real worries yet. Not deep enough in, so.
I'm Andy Michael. I'm Associate Dean and Director for the CFAS Wooster campus, and I'm here to listen to some of the ideas that everybody's going to be generating. I would say that my interest is also what is the most exciting thing about this. As I sit here and listen to all of the potential projects that we just talked about and the projects to come, to me, it's nice to see Grace Drake to become this really integrated research lab space with all the ongoing support system that our ag ops team provides and ATI teaching, but adding the research onto that, not only is going to benefit the lab itself, but it's going to benefit the impact that we have on this campus too. My biggest worry for this is the biggest worry that I have for all of campus is that from an administrative point of view, we won't have all the resources that we need to do everything we want to do. But my interest in this group is to see what I can do from a campus leadership perspective, from a CFAS leadership perspective, make sure we have, and you have, more importantly, everything you need to get done what's most important for the lab. So I'm not sure how much I'll have, but I'd be willing to continue this conversation with Doug and the AMP program to see how we can really make sure Grace Drake can be what it needs to be for AMP and any of the research programs that we have.
Chris Taylor, I'm a faculty member in the Department of Plant Pathology. I'm also the co-director for the Master's Plant Health Management program, where it's a professional degree program where we connect industry professionals with faculty members like you with design projects that they can use to get toward their masters. So listening to what you folks have is very beneficial. What you folks are doing is beneficial to me because then I can maybe potentially connect students with you folks to be able to design projects that would, not only facilitate your ability to do research, but then also them to be able to get a master's and such. My interest is primarily in the biology of little things, particularly little things that are found in soils. And when we talk about regenerative agriculture, we oftentimes think about the big things that are there, but the question is, what's happened to the little things? How do they actually get it back into the system? And I think with a lot of the agriculture and monoculturing in the past, that we may have lost a lot of those little things that are beneficial. And so being able to bring the diversity back into the system, I think, is important. And to identify what those microbes, what those nematodes, other proteins, those things that also are beneficial, maybe are involved in reducing insect or pathogens, just increasing that overall diversity within the soil. How do we go about doing that? I do most of my research actually out in the field in microplots. Typically the microplots are only this big. I'm actually interested in having microplots a little bit bigger, but not at the small plot scale. Something where we can introduce microbes, small things into, and be able to study to determine whether they are able to colonize in when you have an improved soil system. Does it increase is there a benefit to the plant? And being able to do those in the small microplot scale, I think is very important for me. One of the concerns that I might have from a worry standpoint is thinking about having that diversity of scale at Grace, so that students can, you know, if they're involved with that, they can see the diversity of scale of how we do these testings. So that would be my scale. It's a great job.
Brian Gwynn, Special Projects and Interim Office Coordinator. Concern or I guess challenge in my eyes is maybe how base instrumentation of this site for air, water, and soil monitoring, so that it is a resource for the university level, or at least as a visual to the university level, and excitement. Just continuing to work with industry and community on their roles and linkages to this resources within the bioregion.
So also just to, you know, highlight, you know, how important that piece is between the university and the industry linkages. You know, we wouldn't have our smart drainage system if it weren't for Brian and Mike working with Trimble and, you know, others in the industry to provide training exercises for industry professionals. But then, you know, they implemented an infrastructure that has been really valuable for us. And then that relationship continuing to grow and kind of resulting in, you know, further investment in the Trimble Technology Lab. So I think there's, you know, it's really important to see where those connections can really, you know, help build out some of the vision that we're casting here through this workshop.
I'm gonna turn to the online folks. Jim, Marilia, Joe, Eugene, who I'm meeting for the first time. And we'll just go around, let you guys answer those same questions. If you can remember what they are, it doesn't really matter. Jim, on your top left on my screen, so you join first.
All right, thanks, Doug. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry I couldn't make it out to Wooster today. Is there feedback on your end?
Yeah, you're from a weird speaker for us. Hold on.
So let's see if I can shift the audio to the room speaker. Try again, Jim.
Hello? Better?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, it's better on our end too. I'm Jim Ippolito. I am like Manbeer and Osler and Fernanda. I'm relatively new. I'm new to SENR as of 4 months ago, and 4 months and 2 days ago. No, 4 months and 8 days ago. And you can probably tell by the gray in my hair that I'm actually not new. I've been in the soil health, I would call it, arena for over 30 years. I've over my career bridged the gap between soil fertility, chemistry, microbiology. I've bridged the gap between soils and waters and air and greenhouse gas emissions. And I am really excited about Grace Drake. I've been on Grace Drake once with Manbeer and Steve and Kevin a couple of weeks ago. And wow, you have first of all, Wooster is a wonderful place. It's a gem, to be honest with you. And Grace Drake is a great living experimental site that we can utilize to showcase what we do best and what we can do to improve the lives and livelihoods of producers in Ohio and beyond. And what I want to see, at least from my perspective, my focus is on soil health and soil fertility. And I'd like to put some groundwork or lay some groundwork down in terms of soil health across Grace Drake. And when I think about Grace Drake and what's at Grace Drake, almost every single agroecosystem present at Grace Drake I've worked on in my career. So I may not understand completely what's happening at Grace Drake, but I certainly understand what's happening at Grace Drake. And so this is really, really exciting to me to lay down some groundwork for the future. You know, if we laid down some soil health groundwork now, that somebody in 10 or 20 or 30 years from now can go back and say, okay, this is what these systems look like in 2023, and here's what they look like in 2053. So I'm thinking more long-term, but putting the groundwork down now to do so. My biggest concern, I can tell you from big data standpoint, I run an ARS big data project that's almost completed. It's multi-million-dollar, and collecting data and putting it in a location that's accessible to everyone is a real challenge. And so that's my biggest, not worry, but concern.
You want to go next? Earlier, can you hear us?
Hi, is my turn? I couldn't hear you, Doug.
Yep, you're next.
Okay. Hi, I'm Aurelia Chiavegato. I'm an assistant professor with a split appointment between horticulture and crop science and animal sciences. I still consider myself new, although I've been here for 4 years. I work with animal and plant relationships. I try to understand how animal and plant interact, but then most importantly too, how that relationship affects the agroecosystems where these two are placed. So agroecosystems management is my position, is exactly what it is. And everything that Doug was saying about how I agree with how he sees agroecosystems and how that all comes together. So that's my interest in being here and working in this farm. I have not been there. I have never, I think I visited actually during my interview, but I was nervous at that time, so I don't remember. So I should visit again. And my concern is just, I think I agree with some of the main people talking about red tape and then possibly changes in leadership or just leadership changes, decisions, that could affect if there is a change in a direction of where things are going, then, what we started could be affected. So I think that's my main concern. I'm interested in long-term research, although I also am 3-way split appointment. And to understand agroecosystems management function and resilience, we need long-term research. And that is a concern that I have, is how can we do that and where resources. So I think this is my biggest concern.
Great. Joe, you're next.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Jo Peacock, and I'm an assistant professor of restoration and sustainable land management. Not as new as Jim, but not new as Marilia. So I'm somewhere in between. I've been here for around a year or so and just started in this position this semester. So my interests are really on understanding how we can better manage lands and restore landscapes for wildlife. And I've got a bit of a diverse background, so I've worked a lot in sustainable ranching for wildlife during my PhD work. And before that, I actually worked on landscape scale restoration projects in Europe. So we were sort of trying to integrate multiple benefits within landscapes in terms of looking at different types of management that could benefit farming, but also water quality, biodiversity. So I feel like for me, thinking about Graves Drake, the exciting thing, I should say as well, I actually have some research that I have initiated out at Graves Drake. So I know the site. We have, there's a couple of red oak plantations out there that were planted in the 1950s and 1960s, which were studied. It's a bunch of different red oak ecotypes. I think originally they were planted to study, how these plants are going to do in terms of growth. But it's actually a really neat sort of climate change experiment. So I've got a student coming out to do some work on that this year. But yeah, I suppose like taking a step back from the research. So my interest is probably more in the sort of natural and semi-natural habitats across the landscape there. And I think the thing that I'm most excited about here is starting from the beginning, is we sort of have this opportunity to integrate, restoration, habitat creation, habitat management alongside the stuff that's going on in the active parts of the farm. So that would be my interest, and I think that there's a real opportunity to use this as a sort of demonstration site for how to, do ecologically minded farming. So that's something that I'm kind of excited about. I would say, I think, just in terms of concerns. I think it would be a resource, how much, money we have to do this and how many people we have to actually, support the level of monitoring that we need. So for me, thinking about integrating, like at least establishing within the management plan, like permanent monitoring plots for wildlife and things like that would be super important. But I just like thinking of myself personally, I don't know if I would have the capacity to do that, but I think it's something that would be really necessary if you wanted to have sort of biodiversity outcomes on as part of your management plan. But yeah, I'm excited to figure out how we can make it work.
Excellent. Eugene, you're last on the screen, and you get the best claim to being new because you haven't started yet.
Right, yeah, I was going to say I get the award for newest. I'm Eugene Law. I'll be joining the Department of Horticulture and Crop Science in January as an assistant professor of weed ecology. My background is, I guess, a little bit more towards agroecology than weed ecology specifically, but I did my PhD on development of cropping systems for perennial small grain species, and that went from individual plant level studies, physiology based things to all the way up into the food value chain and looking at utilization of products from those systems. And then my postdoc has been in integrated weed management at a USDA facility in Beltsville, Maryland, where I've also helped manage one of the LTAR sites, the Lower Chesapeake Bay LTAR. So I do have experience in that type of long-term agroecosystem research. And I think this is incredibly exciting. Someone like me that does weed ecology, we definitely would love to get past the small plot scale research because it's hard to talk about populations in that context, but it's also very difficult to coordinate and run that sort of research without a team like this and a platform for it. So the opportunities there are I'm assuming going to be tremendous, but having been part of the LTAR network and even just helping manage a single site in the LTAR network, to Jim's point about data management and coordination, that is a huge lift and really requires a lot of communication and leadership. So that would be my biggest worry, is that we go to a lot of effort with this, and then what we're able to take out of it from a scientific standpoint is limited by those types of factors.
Great comments. Now I know we're out of time, but I'm going to quickly just share my last slide because I made it. I'm really proud of it. So the next steps, and I guess I should share for those of you who hit escape aren't in the room. Right, so thanks for bearing with me a little over time, but I think we'll finish. So I'd like to identify a core group. After this meeting, I'll send an email out to everybody if you want to be involved in what I see as kind of a monthly planning group meeting that'll drive towards a workshop sometime in the spring. There'll be a big invite list. This needs to be a community effort, but if you think this is high enough priority, you want to devote some time to that, let me know. I do think some of you have mentioned data that may already exist that we want to potentially integrate into the geodatabase. On the livestock side, Kevin's hinted that we began to work with how the livestock are being managed in the grazing pastures. Haley, maybe something follow up with you now that Stuart's gone. But just get a sense of what else is out there. Reed's colonies, we can do point data, we can do field data, management things. But probably the most important thing is we did get resources to engage people to pay. We got $15,000, not a lot, but enough that we could probably buy equipment or pay for, some instrumentation or whatever it might take to engage students. I'm going to reach out to the College of Wooster. I already have, and Wooster High School science classes to see if there might be some interest in participating in some crowdsourced data collection. Steve didn't mention, but he had, talked with Jim Ippolito, and then Steve and Manveer and others. We've talked about doing that kind of comprehensive soil sample across a lot of this landscape. Does it give us baseline data? Also, it's a signal on what's there as a reflection of the last 15 years of management. That's why I wanted to backcast 15 years of management to understand the kind of diversity of outcomes you might view. But yeah, if you have ideas, I know that plans for spring teaching are afoot. And if there's any opportunities for experiential learning, methodology training, or getting out in the field and doing stuff, we'd love to partner and even extend the scope of what you can do by providing resources, if that's helpful. I will just mention, I've talked with a colleague at College of Wooster. They have a class called the Sustainable Entrepreneurship Team or class. And I'm going to probably contract with them to go and interview managers of other long-term agroecosystem research sites like the LTAR network that Eugene talked about, which is the USDA network, and get some lessons for us as we go into this to get our eyes wide open. I'm sure we'll hear about data management. I'm sure we'll hear about scale and keeping it manageable and not overreaching. But just to kind of have that be part of our input into our decision making. Again, by next May, maybe, I'd love to have a plan if we can get there that fast. I don't think it has to be done by May, but I do think by some people's scales, that's moving real slow, like in the industry. But by academic scales, that's like real optimistic. And so we'll see how fast we go. Next year, we'll already be in the ground by the time we come up with the plans. We probably won't be changing our cropping plans unless we move faster. But we could probably evolve once we have a vision as to what the first steps might be. And some things may have to wait until we get more resources, but we can sketch out what the right approach is for us to leverage this facility. Any final questions? Comments, feedback? Thank you for taking an hour and a half in a busy life. You know, that's a big ask. I'm encouraged and excited by the scale of interest and the great things that each of you brings to this. My goal would be to, because I've done this a lot in my career, to be realistic about we're all fully occupied already, but how do we build something like this collaboratively? And some people carry more water than others, but if you want to be part of it, I think a cadre is going to be really important so that we have the right voices in the room. You guys online?